What was the most shocking thing you heard the quiet kid say? In class he asked the woman teacher if he could go to the toilet. She sternly replied, "You've got 2 minutes." Richard says, 2 minutes? It takes me that long to unravel it. Teacher goes red and everyone loses it. We were having a bullshit elective course and we ran out of stuff to do, so we wound up having story time. My friend walks up to the front and starts telling us about how he once got pretty badly injured. Basically he was walking into his friend's house, slipped on some black ice, faceplanted on it, and his front teeth tore off most of his front lip and broke off. He ran into the house babbling and bleeding. He was like 11 and was missing part of his face, so he wasn't 100% coherent at the time, and his friend's mom takes one look, runs into her bedroom, locks the door, and doesn't do anything until my friend's dad arrives and starts screaming at her. My friend says he still has no idea why the grown adult woman couldn't handle the situation any better, and we all start making guesses and bullshit psychoanalysis. Cue the quiet kid raising his magnificent head and blessing us with enlightenment. Maybe she just needed to finger herself real quick. So this one kid, who barely ever said 2 words, one day asks the teacher for the time. It was at some after school thing and there was no clock. The teacher says the classic time for you to get a watch, which for some reason was funny to everyone else. The quiet kid doesn't laugh. He looks the teacher dead in the eyes, and once everyone quieted down, he says, "So are you gonna tell me the fucking time? Or what?" Apostrophe. We were in like 7th grade. In class we were studying genetics, and one guy was being a real douche and the teacher couldn't get him to shut up. Then after discussing inbreeding in dogs, one quiet kid raises his hand and says, "So is this likely how Peter, douche, became so ducking retarded? What if we killed everyone with cancer to stop it from spreading?" This douchebag kid who constantly ducked with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friend. The quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the douchebag says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy?" Apostrophe. The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting, "No, I'm all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You wanna hang out, grab some food, maybe duck a bit? Question mark. I like to be on top and you look like a bottom. What do you say, wanna duck tonight? T." The entire line is dead silent. T. The douchebag starts getting all pissed off and acting like has gonna start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay fine, you can be top, baby." Why? The douchebag kid leaves to the entire line laughing their asses off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the douche kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. Quiet guy I work with never said much until he came up to me and asked what happens when an Eskimo comes. Before I get the chance to respond, he throws a handful of ice at me and walks away. In junior high in the mid-80s, the game Trivial Pursuit was all the rage. We played it in math class one day and this kid, Gary, who never said anything at all, totally spanked everyone else by answering every single sports related trivia question. He got a lot of attention for it, and I believe he walked a little taller after that day. I don't think I ever heard him say anything else, but I did see him sitting on the bleachers at a few sports events. At school, having just shown me the scope for supposedly his sniper rifle, if the fire alarm ever goes off and you can't find me, don't use the doors as an exit. The quiet kid from my grade stood up one day, grabbed a broom, stood on a chair, and began trying to swat bees that got inside. One bee landed on the window where quiet kid proceeded to yell "Die bee die," and then swatted and shattered the window. He screeched when it happened and then sat back down. Never heard him speak again. One of my students hardly said a word all year until a couple weeks ago. I was trying to get a group of talkative ones under control and she had enough. She yells out, "Shut the fuck up. Him trying to work, you fucking assholes." Awkward silence followed because I didn't know how to handle the normally studious and quiet one losing it. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." Similar to a friend of mine, the thing about rain is that it makes mud. My dad is very quiet, to the point that it makes most people uncomfortable, even me sometimes. One day, we're at the park and a woman walks past us, and my dad quickly says, "What if I punched that woman in the face and said sorry, I thought you were my wife?" In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry unless you asked her something. Even then, she'd appear terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost her contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said Ryan, her prom date, just fingered the duck out of me, apostrophe. I still laugh about it to this day. He started to attack someone in my class with a table when the teacher got a cup of coffee. That was quite something. I was in marching band in HS, probably 7 years ago now, and we had this huge muscular guy as our brass instructor. He would always yell at us to nail these chords or you're not playing loud enough. There was this little Asian trumpet kid that was so innocent and nice, he barely ever spoke a word. One really hot afternoon, our instructor was being especially loud and said, "Why don't the trumpets blow hard enough?" Dead silence across the field as all the brass are waiting for next instructions. Then we hear, "Why doesn't your mom blow this stick hard enough?" from quiet trumpet kid. Needless to say, we all laughed, got push-ups, and laughed some more. Well, literally this question came at a perfect time. I was just thinking about this, and it was by far in sophomore year of high school. This kid was so odd that honestly no one ever really noticed him. But one day he's sitting across from me at a table, and he sees this one girl in really tight shorts and goes, "God, I could have my head up her ass for months." Apostrophe. It was pretty shocking. 72 virgins is nowhere near enough virgins for eternity. That's like a week's worth of virgins. Apostrophe. I went to middle school and high school with this boy named Daniel. Never once heard him say a word. A friend of mine said he would whisper sometimes. The night of our senior party we heard some music coming over from the corner where the karaoke machine was set up. At first no one really noticed him because people had been singing on it all night and most people stopped paying attention. But this was different cause no one was singing and the music was playing. The DJ stopped the music and started the song again. Daniel was standing there looking frightened, but this time around, when the song started he began to sing. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing and just crowded around him. He wasn't a great singer by any means, but 99% of the people in the room hadn't ever heard him talk. When the song was over everyone started clapping and cheering, and he walked away with a big smile on his face. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatel, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day we were looking out the classroom window as a cop drove by. Donatel opens his mouth and says police car, apostrophe. At the time, we were all excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. In high school, I had first level Spanish with this kid, who was super quiet. At the end of the year, we all had to give a speech in Spanish in front of the entire class. This Methodica stood up and gave a speech, not in Spanish, but in a language that he had spent the entire year inventing. Kid, I've never heard you say anything loudly. You need to shout something out. Quiet kid. What? Kid, shout something. In the middle of a classroom, a full blow high pitched roar is heard. Quiet kid. Christmas. It was a Muslim kid who didn't even celebrate Christmas. What a dude. Playing rugby. Hooker fails completely at line out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Apostrophe. Quietest guy on the team. Never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mum can help. Proceed to fall on floor. Edit. Line out. Line in. It's all the same. So this isn't so much what he said. The seniors played lock-up in ball with the underclassmen. It's exactly what it sounds like. They bounced one little guy constantly. Made him late for class a lot because they'd keep him bouncing so long. Well, one day they were bouncing him and he super politely said, "Please stop. You're hurting me." Obviously the seniors bounced him harder. Apparently that was this kid's breaking point because he leapt onto the nearest senior. We just happened to be our star basketball forward. The little freshman bit into the senior's neck and literally tore a mouthful of skin off. He just stood there with this piece of bloody skin on his shirt growling at everyone. Needless to say, no one ever ducked with Mad Dog Mike after that. My asshole is this big, while making a circle with her fingers. Edit. Lots have asked how big it was. It was probably the size of a euro. Not too big. Not too small. Just like Goldilocks' asshole. I'm sure it was just right. And no. Unfortunately I did not check the old turd cutter out. I failed you, Reddit. I'm sorry. I feel like an asshole. About this big. Jeremy. This guy was so silent that we believed he was a mute. The school had just recently painted the bins in all kinds weird styles. As our group was walking somewhere at lunchtime, we passed a bin that was covered in handprints. He offhandedly goes, "That bin is handy," leaving us dumbfounded at his pun bin. We sat in the classroom in I think 5th grade. My friend had done a PowerPoint presentation about Eminem. He talked about that he lived in a trailer as a young boy, and the quiet, straight A student stands up and says, "Just like you," and asks to use the toilet. No one understood anything of what just happened. We live in North Europe. It's practically no one that lives in a trailer here. My friend didn't. Nothing. Let me explain. I took a class with Sun Hui Cho, the Virginia Tech shooter, one semester before the shooting. The class was called Contemporary Horror. It was a one-time elective offered by my favorite professor. We read horror novels and watched horror films and discussed the craft of creating scary stories, but also how they reflected or represented their era's fears. It was a great class. There were only about 15 students, and it was discussion heavy. Cho was one of them. I honestly never noticed him, even in that small class, until halfway into the semester. He wasn't quiet, he was silent. So on the day we all finally noticed him, our professor asked him something directly, and Cho just stared at him. I can't remember the question, but the nature of it meant silence was potentially an acceptable and funny response. So we all laughed, except Cho. He just kept staring at our professor. Our laughter awkwardly died, and after a few moments of uncomfortable silence, our professor just said, "Okay," and moved on. It was so strange. But I forgot about that weird moment until after his rampage. That professor later told me that Cho's papers had been disturbing, but the nature of our course meant the envelope was being pushed a bit, and it had never been bad enough to suggest he'd do what he did. That professor was a good man, and he admitted he struggled with not blaming himself on some level, for one, not identifying how severe Cho's mental health problems were, and two, for the graphic and terrible nature of some of what we watched in that class, which may have inspired Cho. He knew that was bullshit, but a part of him couldn't help but feel some blame. It was terribly sad. Edit. Added the second paragraph. There was this one quiet girl in my class, and she would never say anything. This was around 3rd or 4th grade, but I would always try and get her to talk. I would be nice. Like when she had no paper in her binder, I'd take notice and give her some before she can ask. When she was searching for a pencil in her bag, I gave her an extra one I had. It was like small little acts. Picking up her pencil when she dropped it, etc. Then at lunch this kid was picking on me. I was short, weak, and very emotional back then. She came out of nowhere and told the guy, "I'll give you 3 seconds to walk away." I was stunned because those were the first words I've ever heard her say. The guy slapped me, and she did a straight kick to his balls after that. I was honored and shocked she ever said anything. She never said anything after that, but I did say thanks. TL. DR 3rd grade. Quiet girl kicks my bully's balls after saying, "I'll give you 3 seconds to walk away." It was the only thing I ever heard her say. Edit. Texted friend that I did get to keep in touch with from back then. She said that quiet girl moved shortly after I did. She did have quiet girl's number. I called it, and it came up with "this landline is disconnected BS." Now I'm struggling even more. I need to find this girl. The girl I texted though didn't even know her last name. No one really did, I guess. What high school she goes to is still unknown. Where she lives still unknown. All is not lost though. I'm still waiting on a Facebook Messenger reply to see if another girl knows her last name. I did try just typing in her first name on Facebook, and I probably typed Elena's name 100 different ways and found nothing. She is not able to be publicly searched on Facebook. Neither am I. But geez, it sucks. I have one last hope, cross his fingers. If you can all cross your fingers with me, it might just work. Edit 2. I'll learn that I won't be able to talk to her. Through a list of people I got her mom's number. Her mom apparently remembered me by name, and then she said that she is in circumstances caused by family not letting her talk to anyone or go anywhere for a while. I never was able to find out why, but you know, it sucks. I'll update if I ever talk to her. If I ever see her, I'll take a photo with her. Tomorrow I'm going to try to talk to her mom again to find out what happened. Thanks for the help, Reddit. If I ever marry her, I will share anything but her body and love with you. Edit 3. Thanks again, Reddit, for all y'all who've cared about my little story. As someone pointed out, it's been 5 months, and I want to add very little has changed. She and I still aren't exactly allowed to talk. I've talked to her mum a couple times. I've talked to her once, and it's been better than the silence between the years. I've learned things like her current height and seen a picture of her, one she took when we got to chat once, but it doesn't look like there's much to work with in talking to her. Her mother was deemed unfit to parent or something like that in court against her dad's parents. I haven't asked about her dad, but I assume he's dead or ran off. I changed some of the things in this edit to avoid having too much info about her out there, but I know I won't be able to take any of it down from the internet for good. So far it looks like the only chance I'll get to talk to her again is when she turns 18 in a year and a half. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.